and look up from my script, and then I get nervous I won't find my spot again.
Oh, no.
At school, there are, and I'm sure it's me from time to time as well, but there are so many teachers who I think model very poorly what we want our students to be doing. And in all sorts of ways, being prepared for a day's class, getting up to make an announcement in front of the group. And so it's just in me, like model for my students, like be better than what my students present.
That's actually a really good thing.
Well, maybe, except then it gives you phobias.
And not, we're all too old to learn from you.
All right, well, 7:02. Run through it again, John. Curtis is out. Vic is out.
Madhu.
And Madhu is out. So Ron, Arnold, and Sam, who we're hoping on, really.
And Rachel.
Ideally, if Kristen or well, there she is, Rachel. Ideally, one of them would show up too, but that hasn't been reliable so far. Nor do I see any members of the public rushing to join us again.
Before you signed on, Mary, I was telling Ted, if we don't get a quorum, there's Ron. If we don't get a quorum, I'm not super concerned because I think we've made good progress.
Okay.
And we've got the technical assistant consultant on board. So they're going to be doing the review of everything.
Good evening, Ron.
Hey, Ted. Hey, Meredith.
We're still waiting on a couple more to have a quorum.
Were you as impressed as I was with the technology Monday night?
Yes.
Yeah, but I gotta tell you, and I was saying to my wife, I kind of still like the idea of people having to stand for their vote and being able to look around.
I like it a little bit. I like the brevity of.
No, I agree.
The certainty.
And certainly for a full town meeting, being able to speed that part up would be nice.
Yeah, huge.
But I was arguing with myself about the public stand up, let people know where you stand vote, because I certainly think it should be secret ballot when we go, vote on voting day. But I still kind of like the public nature of stand and let people know where you stand. But I'm happy to give it up if we can make a 3.5 day meeting 2 nights.
Oh no, I froze.
Did you say I froze?
That would be nice.
Hi, Arnold. Did you hear me, Arnold? I don't know if. Oh, good. It looks like
I was on mute. Good evening.
Good evening. It's good to see you. We're waiting for one more to have a quorum.
Okay.
Mary, Ron, did you stay for all the votes?
Yeah.
Were you one of the people that bailed when your issue came and went?
No, I was
there for everything.
What time did it end?
10.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Almost on the dot, which was really nice.
Very nice.
I was already taking a nap on my husband's shoulder, so.
Do you think that the select board will bring the parking issue back for the regular town meeting?
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know why they removed it. Do you guys know?
No, I assumed it was just a last minute, not all the ducks were in a row that they could.
That makes the most sense.
Yeah.
John, I'm willing to wait longer, but I'm curious, is there a guideline for how long to wait for a quorum?
I usually wait 10 minutes.
Okay.
If people aren't signed on by 10 minutes after the meeting, they're probably not going to sign on.
All right.
How long do you wait for a professor who was late in college?
That's exactly what I'm thinking is there's that whole rule. If the teacher doesn't show up within 8 minutes, you may leave.
I had a history
Sam-
prof who just
Sam
like
just signed on.
would
Right.
be very, show up whenever, sometimes not at all.
And what's funny is I hear it at my school. Isn't it a rule that if a teacher doesn't show up in 7 minutes, everyone can leave? I'm like, where?
Urban legend.
Good evening, Sam. Are you all set?
Hey, good evening. Sorry, I'm late.
No,
Yes,
that's okay.
I'll hop on camera here in just a few minutes. One
Okay.
sec.
With you here, we have a quorum, so I'll start by reading the script. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with the applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access the meeting via virtual means. Participants may access this meeting through the remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will now confirm attendance of the members. Please respond with present if you are on the call. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Present.
There you go. Ted Barker Hook is present. Ron Foisey.
Present.
Arnold Cohen.
Present.
Kristen Borzamato. No. Madhu Chandrasekhar. No. Rachel Rawson. No. Sam Sater.
Present.
Curtis Smithson. No. And Vic Proddy. No. And helping us out as ever, John Gelsich.
Present.
Wonderful. So let's launch into this. Once again, I'm going to flip the agenda. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes? And if so, does anybody have any edits? I saw nothing myself.
I actually didn't get a chance to read the minutes, so I won't vote on. Can I not vote on the?
Well, you can, but then we'll just have to table voting on the minutes till the next meeting because we won't have,
Yeah.
and that's fine. We can do that easily.
Yeah, sorry. And the reason I was late, I actually landed from out of the country 2 hours ago, and I'm just playing catch up. So
Does it feel like it's the middle of the night right now or middle of the afternoon?
it is. I can't even tell you. I was in Dubai, and it was a 9-hour difference. I don't even know where I'm supposed to be right now. So
Well, hopefully you can hang on for us. We need you, Sam.
yeah, no, I'll be on. Yep.
So we will we'll put the minutes aside and we'll make that next meeting. We'll take a look at 2 sets of minutes. And that gets us to our other agenda item, which is to go over the latest version of the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District bylaw. Hopefully, and Sam, I know you were traveling, but hopefully people got a chance to go through this fairly carefully. I think the best thing to do is just kind of start on page 1 and go through until somebody has a comment. My first comments are when we hit open space in the definitions. And that is where John certainly wanted us to take a look. Does anybody have anything before that point in the bylaws? No. Great. Oh, yes. Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, please. Downtown subdistrict, just looking at the, the no setback and things like that. My question is, is the downtown subdistrict, I'm just thinking that obviously there's this area of shops that are right on the sidewalk that obviously are right up abutting one another. But is the district that we're talking about outside of that area as well? Where there aren't currently? And if so, how far outside of that district? I'm just,
So John sent us his map, but honestly, when I printed it, it was so small I couldn't see a thing. John, could you possibly pop that map up again so that we can kind of zoom in on the downtown district? Please.
so it doesn't go to town hall, right?
I think you're
It
muted.
does go to town hall.
Okay, and it has like the CVS and parking lot. And then,
This is the fire station, I believe.
okay,
And then this is the police station.
okay. So I just want, you know,
And
I
then
just
John,
want
Mary,
to,
just a sec. John, working to the east, is that the church that is unhashed?
I believe so, yes.
Right,
This
okay.
is, I believe this is the Mason Hall.
Right, I think so too.
okay.
All right, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so so just, you know, and I'm stating the obvious here, but it does not include the mansion and that side of the street, other than that corner gas station and a few houses surrounding that, or a few lots surrounding that.
It looks like Muffin House is included
Yeah,
in the zone.
like Muffin House is right on that, and then there's a house behind that gas station that so that makes
There's
sense.
kind of a commercial building that I think has a realtor.
Mhm.
One of my kids went to a speech therapist in that building for a little bit.
So, so I just want everyone to be comfortable with the concept that we're talking about having zoning that essentially is talking about buildings could be built right up abutting one another, right up to the sidewalk, like a typical commercial area, you know, the little shops. But that would include all of these areas. So visualize the downtown and just make sure that you're all comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with it. I just wanted to make sure that we thought it through, and, you know, when questions start to come up from people looking at it for the first time, that we know what we're talking about.
I think that's a good thing to bring up, Mary. Does anyone have thoughts, comments? Are we still feeling good about what we've slashed off there?
Okay.
Okay,
That was my
So-
only,
Can I just interject?
of course.
Do we want to, can you see my cursor?
No. Oh, there, it's way up at the top right now.
Is it,
Now it's down by the hop truck.
do we want to include these properties or this one part? I don't know if it's one parcel or two parcels.
Is that the bank and the liquor store?
Yes.
I would be okay including them. I wonder about historical significance of the liquor store, but the historical protections would still live on, right?
I believe so. That would be the only parcel I would include. I would not include the police station.
yeah,
No, I agree.
And then I wouldn't include this building because it's got all this property back here.
okay.
So these would be the only two I would suggest to potentially add, but it's a nice clean line down here. So I don't know if it's necessary.
My own take is assuming if that liquor store was deemed historically significant, it still has protections. I would be okay adding that.
Me too.
Anybody have thoughts in the other direction?
Yeah, of course. Just from the standpoint of if the current 58 something acres does qualify, I don't see the need to add any additional space on there.
Would you then argue for removing any of that space?
No, I mean, I think John has gotten it as close as he can to 50 without, and still qualifying.
Mhm.
But I don't know what that line is. Is 58 enough? Does it need to be 62, or would 54 be enough? But I don't see the need to add any more.
Okay. Is there an argument from anybody for adding it? And John, do you have a thought for a reason you brought up maybe adding it?
Just that they're there.
Yeah.
There's nothing inherently different about them than the other properties that were included, but there's no need to include them.
I don't know either. As I think it through, the reason to add it for me is it kind of fits in with what we are now redefining as a downtown use. And those buildings have been fairly defunct for a while. A reason to not add it is to protect commercial space and not let it become residential potentially. And maybe eventually a bank will move back into the bank. And so, I mean, I can go either way. I don't think I have very strong feelings either way. If anybody, I think what I'm hearing is Ron has the strongest feeling. I don't know how strong you would categorize it, Ron, but if anyone feels more strongly than Ron that it should be included, then we have a discussion. Otherwise, I think Ron wins the day. I certainly don't feel more strongly than I think Ron did. I'm not hearing anyone speak up. All right, I think we go with it as it is, John. All right, going ahead in the bylaw then, getting to that open space highlighted in yellow section. So I had several comments, and maybe a way to make sure a discussion goes is I'll just share with you what I saw, and then we can either say that I'm foolish even for bringing it up, or maybe I have a point worth discussing. The question of sidewalks, should sidewalks count as open space, I think is what's being asked. My initial thought was, well, the last question is, should setback areas count? And my initial thought was, no, setback areas should not count as open space. Mostly because I feel like setbacks that's not really your property to develop anyway. So you don't get to count that in what you are developing. And then I thought, maybe setbacks shouldn't count if they're adjacent to a road, because if it's adjacent to a woods, if it's adjacent to something else, there was an exception later on in the bylaw that said something like you don't have to maintain the setback if it's up against an already naturally wooded spot. So my first reaction was no, setbacks don't count as open space. And then I thought maybe there's some wiggle room depending on what the setback bumps up against. As for sidewalks, I said, within the setback area, I'm okay with calling sidewalks open space if they are made of permeable pavement. Because we do want sidewalks, and sidewalks can be attractive and decorative. And if they're permeable pavement, then it also doesn't create water issues. So those were my first two reactions to what I saw. What do you guys think of any of that? Go ahead, Mary, just speak up. Especially tonight, we have very few.
Okay. So when I was putting this together, this is why I put the big sidewalk question mark.
These were your questions, not John's.
These were mine. Yep.
Okay.
So I was not quite sure how we normally did it. And I was, looking at other town bylaws from other towns and in the country. So some of them had the sidewalks being included in open space. My only thought was if you include them, then they're not going to kind of shirk on the number of sidewalks when a sidewalk is really needed. But at the same time, if developers are used to sidewalks not being included in open space in our bylaws, then I would probably want to keep it the same. So it's not, inherently confusing just by being contrary to our normal way of doing things.
John, do you know if they're normally included or not?
So we don't have an open space requirement.
So we don't have a precedent in this.
Okay.
Yeah, and sidewalks are generally, I won't say all the time, but generally in the right of way. So they wouldn't be on the applicant's property.
Yeah, but no sidewalks. I'm thinking in a multi-housing development, there's going to be sidewalks to get from place to place within the
So
development.
Maybe
we may,
sidewalk isn't the right term, maybe.
yeah, we may want to call them like walking paths or pedestrian pathways to differentiate from sidewalks.
And you said on-site sidewalks. That was your, and that's, I think that's critical, is that the on-site walkways or whatever. Maybe those can be considered within the open space, but anything at the perimeter or at the roadway, that's not an open space area.
I
Does
was
that make
also,
sense?
I was also trying to think about it, and I think we still don't have a developer of any kind on the call. If you were a developer and if you were looking to save money, is it cheaper to have grass and bushes, or is it cheaper to have sidewalks? I don't know the answer to it. It seems that the maintenance of sidewalks is pretty small, except for in the winter, whereas maintenance of landscaping is much more. So a worry I had was, and we'll try to call them walkways, not sidewalks, to differentiate from the municipal purpose up against the street. My worry was, let's make 10-foot wide walkways, 15-foot wide walkways between buildings, between an exit and the street. And that certainly doesn't look like what I think about with open space.
Yeah.
And so if you kept doing that, then you could have a lot of open space that isn't really kind of the environmental thing that I think of for open space.
So when you get to the wording in the main section, because this was a section cut out for the definitions,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So there's some additional wording around the open space and pathways and trails and things. Okay. But I had one more question within this definition item. The first word is contiguous. I'm like, well, I wouldn't think that open space on a lot like this is going to be contiguous. I'd say there's some green space on,
Funny, I was looking at the next
perimeters
two words, underdeveloped land, similar question.
and it's, yeah. So I don't think contiguous is something we want to say.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So this, I believe, is a combination of the model bylaw and then some other stuff mixed together. Do we have a definition of open space that maybe we just want to start fresh from? Would that be easier?
Well, why don't we go down to that other section? And then we can see whether or not any of it.
This is
could be-
210, 257.
Is
I
it this
can't
one,
remember.
the shared outdoor space?
No, it's
Site design,
where was it? I just was looking at, okay, number 3 under 210, 257B, number
Right.
3. Yeah, that's the section that I wrote. Or plagiarized. And then we can see if any of this like makes the definition easier. Okay.
number B looks like a definition.
Also C.
Which actually, my question was, if you go back to the definition we were looking at earlier, it says undeveloped, which actually is not accurate, I think.
Right. That's what I was saying. I underlined as well, Sam.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, so I think that was an existing definition that I didn't play with. I didn't even look at. So we can ignore it entirely and start afresh. Okay, so 30% was just the number that I picked out of the air, but partially based on our discussion last meeting. And it's totally open for discussion. And this second sentence in 3A, John, it looks like you probably added that, and it makes sense. For the downtown sub-district, since there is no open space requirement, but we do encourage some sort of common space for residents as part of the development. So that was clarifying that this does not apply technically to the downtown sub-district.
John, may I ask a question on the wording of that open space A, that second sentence? I know you're not a lawyer, but you're more versed in this than we. The downtown sub-district should provide common space. Is that the same as shall provide?
Shall is a requirement, should is a recommendation.
So that was on purpose. So they don't have to create, according to this language, they're not required for it to make any common space at all.
Correct. Well, they're not required to make open space. But then if you go down
Well,
to,
you said common space right
so
after.
if you go
this.
down here to this one, shared outdoor space, it's not technically open space, but that's why I highlighted the last sentence, because if this requires common outdoor space that can be considered terraces, courtyards, things that would not fall under the definition as we currently have it of open space. In F.
Why can't I find? Oh, there, it's this app. Okay. Oh, I had a lot of comments on that one too.
So
that actually is, again, was not, I think, kind of duplicates some of the things that I put in, because I tried to put it all in one section and just that. And I didn't see this part, this shared outdoor space.
And that does use the verb shall.
right, but it doesn't put a requirement on how large it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from the model bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so essentially, my open space description talks about open to the sky and on the ground. So this shared outdoor space could be rooftop or could be ground floor. Terrace and courtyard still are on the ground and still are open to the sky. So those would count as open space.
Well, they don't have to be on the ground floor.
No, they don't have to be. So yeah, I mean, theoretically there could be a courtyard that's, up a few floors, but in the middle of the houses. So all of those things would be outdoor space that aren't part of the open space per the wording right now. Okay.
I'll admit I'm getting a little lost because now we've
Yeah.
got kind of
Can we
three
go back to
different
the open
definitions
space?
of open space working.
So I'll walk you through the stuff that I mostly drafted. Okay, so minimum 30%. Downtown district, sub-district is not part of that. Open space will consist of the landscaping, naturally vegetated areas, trails, and I think we do need an Oxford comma there, and shared open areas with permeable hardscape. And I looked online to see how I thought it was going to be pervious, because that's a term that Beta uses a lot and everything like that but all over the web, they talk about permeable, not pervious. So, and then again, I plagiarized this straight from something else. It may or may not be appropriate for us. Okay. All open space must be outdoor area on the ground, which is open to the sky, which is designed and used for outdoor living or recreation. Obviously shall not include parking, vehicle circulation areas. Open space used for recreation, conservation, or agriculture, meaning, they could put a garden in. Purposes by residents and or the public. Trails are appropriate. And I know that there's some repeat in here. So if we cut out some things, that's okay. It's just so we don't have duplication of wording. All landscaped areas shall be permanently maintained with proper care, weeding, pruning, irrigation. Open space may not be used for components of the sewage disposal systems. That's basically like, I didn't want the leaching fields or, the big, even grass covered areas, because I think that can too easily be, give the wrong, I guess it's too easily misused in meeting the 30%. I think it could be easily misused, and people can't really have recreation in most of the sewage retention ponds or things like that. So. And required setbacks shall be maintained in landscaped or naturally vegetated state. This may be appropriate in a different section entirely if we're just talking about how the setbacks are maintained, if the setbacks are not considered part of open space, okay? Because the landscaping there or the vegetated state that they're in are intended just to screen the development from abutting and neighboring uses. Oh, and this is where that exception was. This vegetated setback requirement may be eliminated where the proposed development abuts existing permanent open space. So basically they're saying you don't need to build a landscape buffer between open space and yourself, which I think makes a lot of sense.
But there needs to be a buffer. You can't put the building right next to the permanent open space.
Yeah. But the vegetated setback requirement, right. The setback itself is still there. They just don't need to landscape. They could run
a pathway through there instead.
Yeah. So maybe that needs to be clarified.
Could they put parking in there?
No.
Or a service road?
I mean, the setback should still be there.
Okay.
Just doesn't need to be trees and naturally vegetation that's serving as a screening.
Okay.
Maybe that's.
I can't picture what else it would be if it weren't a road or a sidewalk or
just a lawn.
Oh, okay. So a mowed lawn instead of let to run wild a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense to me. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm derailing, maybe that's not the right word. One of the things I'm noticing, Mary, between open space 3 is where we are right now. Open space must be outdoor area on the ground. But then if we fast forward to F under buildings mixed use development, there we say any of the outdoor spaces, including a rooftop or a terrace, counts as open space. It seems like those two are in conflict. Or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, they are in conflict. Again, I didn't write that other paragraph.
Oh, right. Okay. And I guess I'm talking to everyone, not just you, Mary, but since these are the pieces you kind of put together, is that a conflict that we, Zach, should talk about right now? Or is there something else that I just skipped past? All right, so I'm going to talk about it. I like the idea of a rooftop terrace and a garden. I don't like that counting as open space. To me, open space is on the ground. You can have rooftop terraces. It's very environmentally friendly. It's good green building code. I get all that. It's not really open space to me. I know we have other requirements about the maximum lot size for a building. But if you build a building that takes up 100% of the lot, but put some rooftop gardens on there, that to me is not open space. It's pleasant space. It's outdoor space, but it's not open space to me. So the highlighted line under F, I would propose removing.
Or specify that it does not count toward the open
Right.
space requirement.
Right, we could put shall not count. That's my own thought, but I don't want to speak for the group.
I'm with you on this. I'm more comfortable. I mean, I do like the idea of rooftop gardens on large buildings and things like that. So that's cool. But I think it's only going to apply in the downtown district, sub-district, really,
Where there isn't an open space requirement.
where there isn't an open space requirement, but instead of the open space, they will be able to do this type of outdoor space.
Right.
Through the chair.
Yes, please.
I just changed the last sentence. Is that something you would be looking for?
John, I'm sorry. Could you make it bigger? My glasses don't work as well as they used to.
Let's see. How do I zoom in?
I don't know if I'm alone on that
The
one.
shared outdoor space within the footprint of a building shall not count toward the project's minimum open space requirement.
So, yeah, I was going to say that.
Okay, now I can read it just fine. Thank you. That works for me.
Yeah, I like that. Arthur has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just speak up, Arthur. I'm sorry. Or Arnold. He's Arnold, not Arthur.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I followed your lead there, Mary. Just speak up, please, Arnold. I think you're on mute.
So on that subparagraph F, these are going to have 10 units per acre. And I have a question whether that language on that subparagraph F that's not shaded in yellow. I mean, does that come from the state recommended form? That includes rooftop terraces as being common outdoor space. If so, I suggest we keep that language. You're talking about not counting the setbacks as open space. I think you're gonna. I'm just wondering whether we're limiting the amount of space where they can build on. If you keep limiting it that way, and then it's when shared outdoor space within the footprint of a building shall not count towards the project's minimum open space. I think the same thing. I mean, it just seems to cut back on, might make it unbuildable. Or maybe that's what we want to do. We don't want them to build it, but that's again, it's hard to picture how somebody's going to build something there, I suppose. But I don't know what John thinks about that, but that's just what occurred to me.
So, John, I'm going to come to you in just a moment. As far as the setbacks counting, that was my initial proposal, Arnold. I don't think we've agreed on that at all. I just threw that out there. And even there, I began to waver a bit. As for the language here, Mary, is that your language, or John, did that come from the model?
Came from the model.
Okay.
And is the model considered just suggestions or recommendations from the state?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Arnold, we can talk about it. I just shared, at least with regard to F and rooftop terraces, I shared my thoughts about why it shouldn't count as open space. But I'm happy to hear from, and I think Mary seconded my thoughts, but I'm happy to hear from Ron or Sam as well, if you guys have thoughts on F before or I guess including the highlighted.
The one comment I'll add, and this may not actually be helpful, and I'll just blame it on jet lag, is I'm struggling. I'm equally struggling with setback, open space, and shared outdoor space to be clearly defined separately, and whether they account or do not account towards open space. And I'm just trying to put myself in the place of a developer, and just I think we just need some clarity, perhaps. But again, as I said, not a very helpful comment, but that's kind of where my mind's at right now.
Are you suggesting in the definition section, we ought to define those better? I mean, I think we started with the definition of open space
Yeah,
in this part of our
it
discussion.
could just be that they just, as we refine them, things will become easier. But, you know, it seems like we're landing on open space is ground, the type of vegetation or whatever. Whereas shared outdoor space, we're saying there shall be, I go back to what John said. You're saying shall is not a recommendation, it's a requirement. So then are we going to, when it's a requirement, we're going to have to specify what that requirement is so that they can meet the requirement. So anyway, I'm just working it out further in my head. Sorry.
It's okay. I think for now, I certainly understand these different terms being confusing because maybe I haven't done a very good job of separating those different discussions. So I think I'm trying to fix that by right now, let's only look at F and think about whether shared outdoor space should count as open space or not.
Yeah,
and I understand Arnold to say he thinks it should count. Mary and I think, Mary, I don't want to speak for you, think that we love the idea of outdoor space and rooftop terraces, but that should not count as open space, ground level plantings, water features, et cetera.
So the thing about it is that if the shared outdoor space is actually of the open space kind, then why wouldn't it count? You know what I mean? So unless we're saying that the shared outdoor space is strictly for rooftops and courtyards and terraces and not the open space kind. That's so, you know what I mean? I think if the shared open space the shared outdoor space, it meets the open space definition, then it should count towards it.
If I agree, if it does meet the open space definition, it is open space.
Right. And the definition, our current one has ground floor open to the sky, which is why I think John's edits there, shared outdoor space within the footprint of the building. And that would be a rooftop terrace or a building built like a donut with, a little spot in the middle of it.
Let me just throw out
shared outdoor space that is actually.
Then again, go ahead.
That is actually I don't know, take a little walk from the building and then there's a little place to kick a ball or, get a chair and read with your toes in the grass. That is both shared outdoor space and open space, the way I think we're moving right now. But go ahead, Mary.
One thing I'd like to add, Ted, is that the first sentence ends with that all residents can access.
Right.
And I think what that does, it gives a potential developer the opportunity to create shared access open space that might be on a rooftop or a terrace. And it may not conform with what we think of as open space in terms of grass and fields. On the other hand, in certain settings or a certain development, that might be a very attractive way to use the landscape. I mean, I'm not a developer, but I think saying that all residents can access something, to me, I would include that as part of open space.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes, please.
And tell me if you don't want my opinion on all this, because I am not.
I always want
voter in Hopkinton. But I just added open space to the end of this because the way that I see it, based on how you all are talking about it, is you got to think about the two different districts. In the upper Cedar Street district, there's enough space to do outdoor open space. In the downtown, there's not. So if we put open space as a defined term, as being allowed to meet the requirement of this shared outdoor space, then the upper Cedar Street subdistrict could use the open space requirement to meet this. The downtown subdistrict wouldn't. So they would have to put any developments in that subdistrict would have to do courtyard, rooftop, terrace, or something like that. And therefore, you're requiring shared outdoor space in all the developments, but the upper Cedar Street subdistrict could use the outdoor open space to meet that requirement and not have to put in a courtyard, terrace, rooftop, that type of thing. Because it would be a different style of development in my mind.
You've captured exactly the way I'm thinking about it. Another thing I was going to say is I think both open space and outdoor space are desirable, but they're not necessarily the same thing. They're not synonymous terms. I agree, John, with what you said. You've certainly captured my thoughts. What do you guys think? Anyone else have a thought on what John had to say?
No, I like you adding that. If we're going to keep them separate concepts, if we decide that's the way we go, I think this is purely me in terms of how I read, a bylaw or something like that. I personally think the shared outdoor space should be right below the open space definition. So when someone's going through it, they see all of the different ramifications all at once. I still don't think that a rooftop should count toward open space.
So through the chair, the way that this is written, it wouldn't.
It wouldn't. No, I understand the way it's written.
Right.
But I think it was still being suggested that it should be part of open space by some other members. And I believe in the downtown district, this is perfect because it's going to be outdoor space only. It doesn't specify how much outdoor space. It is a requirement, the way it's worded correctly right now, because it says shall have some common outdoor space. And it doesn't matter that it doesn't count toward open space because there is no open space requirement for the downtown district. Okay. So, and then when we're in that other parcel, I imagine that the most likely scenario is that there is not going to be a rooftop terrace and there will be open space around the building or between buildings if there's multiple buildings. And that green space at the ground floor will be the open space. Okay. And as far as it not being feasible, I wanted to just address Arnold's concern. Just the feasibility of, building all this, is we can change the percentage that's required. So we need to, certainly gut check it, make sure it makes sense from a buildability standpoint and change the percentages required of open space. Keeping in mind that it's not in the downtown district at all. But just, if we need to change it, we'll change it. But I do like the way it's worded right now for shared outdoor space.
I like the wording right now too. Sam, are you persuaded one way or the other with this particular point?
Yeah, I think excluding, specifying that if it's within the footprint of the building, it doesn't count. If it's not, then it does count. I think does it for me. So as written, I think I'm okay with it.
And Ron?
Sounds good.
Arnold, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I just made a suggestion. I would go with the flow.
Okay. All right. So I think a good next move now is look at our initial definition of open space and make sure it aligns with or eliminate repetitive stuff, certainly get rid of contradictory stuff. Do we just take a line from the other section? I think that there was
Yeah, like I think it was B or C was pretty good.
right, under site design, under general development standards.
Yep.
And I don't know if there's a blending of those two. I don't know if all of C is necessary. I don't know if that's too long and cumbersome a definition if we take that whole thing. It doesn't look, just eyeballing it, it doesn't look any longer than the definition for structured parking, so maybe it's not too. Some shared open space, permeable landscape. Yeah. I like that a lot better than what's above it. Anyone else?
Yeah, I like that. I think that works.
Is a discussion of sidewalks or pathways. Sidewalks, again, we're going to call those right along the road of paved paths as part of open space or not. My thought was for it to count, it needs to be permeable pavement. So at least it's retaining some of the characteristics of natural landscape.
Through the chair, devil's advocate point.
Go ahead.
A developer wants to put in a asphalt walking path surrounding the entire site so that people can do laps. Would that not be considered open space? Or a basketball court?
I mean, I don't have the definitive answer. When I hear open space, let me just look at the definition again. A basketball court wouldn't fit that first sentence, I don't think, unless you make it permeable pavement for the basketball court. An asphalt track, if you will, unless it's permeable, doesn't fit that first sentence. And I think that first sentence, at least for me, catches the spirit of what open space is meant to be. But I'm just one guy here.
I don't even know if any of the lots we're proposing would be ideal for this type of development. But if you think of like, let's think of Legacy, how they have shared, going back to the shared space piece where they have the pool outside, they have like grilling areas, they have obviously, that's that type of amenities. I think we would want to encourage that somehow. And if none of it counts towards anything, then it might not ever make sense for a developer to put that stuff in too.
Although, if you are looking to rent a place and it's a place that has a pool and has an outdoor picnic area, it makes it more desirable to the potential.
Right. That's what I mean. I'm saying we don't.
Maybe that's the incentive, not getting bonus points on open space.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I see. That's what you're saying.
And I was thinking the same way about rooftop terraces before, is it seems to me that would make your property more desirable rental space. And that's reason enough to think about including those things. Do you guys I thought John's question was good. It made me pause. I think it's good if we have a development for there to be a basketball court. I'm not against that idea necessarily. It just doesn't fit.
Through the chair, just another point. This section here allows the planning board to grant waivers. So they could, if somebody came to the board and said, we want to do open space, a basketball court, can we get a waiver to do a basketball court and have that count as the open space? Potentially, the planning board could waive that.
And then the last line of the waiver says, a finding of consistency of such variation within the overall purpose. Yeah, I'm comfortable leaving that up to the discretion of a planning board. Which means I think I'm back to no, I would not count a basketball court as open space. I feel like maybe I'm alone. I don't want to speak for everybody.
No, I'm with you on that. And as far as the asphalt, trail, I mean, I guess I would encourage a permeable choice instead. Knowing all the water issues that we have in town. And again, of course, it could be waived.
So, John, where it says permeable landscape, would that be understood to also be permeable pavement trails?
Yeah, any hardscaping.
Yeah, permeable hardscape would be, yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Again,
Yeah.
I really got to get a new pair of glasses. These are not serving me well. So yeah, okay, so good. And that would then also mean a non-permeable path would not count as open space.
Correct. So my thinking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is the way that this is written, it allows waivers from section 257. And this is where the requirement of 30% open space comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So if a developer wants to do a basketball court and a asphalt track, but they only can have 25% open space of permeable, then the planning board could waive 5%,
Great.
given that they're doing these other non-permeable recreational opportunities.
Great.
That's
All
how
right.
I'm thinking it would work.
That feels good to me then. I like where we are with that. Anyone else have anything else before we move past our open space? Have we covered the open space section? Just looking at my notes of the different open space sections.
I think so.
Oh, I did have one question. I think it's probably a small one, John, and everybody else. Let me just make sure it's my only one with regard to this. Oh, we still have to talk about whether setbacks count as open space, I think. But if we could really quickly, John, to get something easy, under section 210, 257, open space number 3, D. Do you know where I'm going?
Sorry, I was just typing up minutes. What's the section?
I'm sorry. So if you go to 210, 257, this is where we have the minimum 30% open space stuff. But go to letter D, which is landscaped areas shall be permanently maintained. No, not that, not capital D, small d under number 3, open space. There we go, right there. Is that right?
I took out the B and C and made them.
Oh.
So now it's B.
So now it's B. Okay. I just had a question on. Wait a minute. Oh no, now it's C. What I'm looking at. I have a question on irrigation. I presume what that means is don't let your plants die. You gotta water them. But we every summer have water restrictions. Does a bylaw that requires irrigation run afoul of water restrictions?
So we could say,
Sure. Good.
That's good.
That makes
And
it
also,
squishy.
in general, is this interpreted to exclude any care being taken for the naturally vegetated areas, or do lot
Well, those wouldn't be
owners-
landscaped.
Yeah, I know that wouldn't be landscape. That's what I'm saying. It's not, so do they need to take care of, like trees that fall down or something like that? I mean, I don't know. What requirements are there, if any, to maintain naturally vegetated areas?
So generally, and this is how we interpret it for open space and landscape preservation developments, is that they need to be, the natural areas need to be maintained in their natural state. So if they have a 20-foot wide naturally vegetated setback and a tree falls, they're not going to take that tree out. They're going to leave it there.
Okay.
If it falls onto a landscaped area, they'll probably remove the whole tree, but they would at least remove the portion of the tree in the landscaped area
Mhm.
and then return it to the natural vegetated area.
I would like to encourage that we add something like all landscaped and hardscaped areas shall be permanently maintained with proper care, in whatever way you think is appropriate, John. Because
We
obviously
could just take out the weeding, pruning, and irrigation.
we
and
could
just
do
say
that.
all landscaped and hardscaped areas shall be maintained in perpetuity with,
Yeah,
or
Yeah.
maintained proper. Yeah.
with appropriate
That's
care. Yeah, whatever.
And then we talk about permeable pavement, which we've talked about tonight. We talk about it in Concom fairly regularly. And one pushback is the maintenance required for permeable pavement, that you have to power wash it if it's a sidewalk, like once a year. Would C now include that type of maintenance for with proper care? Would it be understood that that's also take care of make sure the permeable pavement stays permeable? Or is
So
that
permeable pavement also includes like flagstones because they have big gaps between them for water.
right? I understand that.
That.
But if it is like the concrete that's permeable, a step that is required is to kind of power clean it maybe once a year. If it's cars are driving on it, it's more often. My question is C, is it understood that that's also maintained if you have the poured pavement that is permeable? Is it understood that maintaining that properly is included in C? John, that's a nod, yes?
I believe so. And I added so that residents may utilize these areas as designed. So
Oh,
that
okay. Yeah,
so
I think you typed that as I was trying to follow.
I did. Yes, I did. I think that captures that, because then if they
Right.
don't maintain the permeable pavement and it clogs up and it floods,
Yeah.
then it's not working as designed.
Fantastic. That looks good to me. If everyone's okay with it, if we could stay here, John, my next one is scroll down to number 6, plantings. Where you write shall include species that are native. I wonder if include is too squishy, and I would like it to be shall be entirely, or something like that is my thought. Shall be the majority if we wanted to allow a little bit of room. I think what we see in the Conservation Commission is native plantings make a huge, huge difference versus non-native decorative plantings. Do other ZAC members have thoughts on that?
I agree completely.
No pushback from anybody? I saw a nod from Ron.
That's fine.
Okay,
Does that work? So I changed it from shall be to shall only include.
yeah,
Do you like
I'm okay
one
with
way
that.
versus the other?
No, I think that's fine. Shall be sounded clunky, but I couldn't come up with a better verb. I just didn't like shall include. So I like that. Number 8. This is fencing. My question for you, and this is really aimed at you, John. Does site plan requirements help ensure that it's not an ugly chain link fence with plastic woven through it? Does site plan requirements give room to make sure it's not a heinous looking fence covering up whatever's required to be covered?
what one person's heinous is
Yeah.
another person's not heinous. So so I mean,
I know there was recently with the solar farm over on Wilson Street, there was a lot of discussion about what is an appropriate screening of whatever that equipment was close to the road.
so if you're putting in fences, solid fences obviously will screen it. Chain link fences are the ones that will not. So the
Unless you
treatments that
weave the plastic through it.
right. So you could either do the what Wilson Street did of do the fabric in front, or you can do the slats in the chain links. So you could always say fencing must be solid or vinyl privacy fence if that's what you want, or I think any evaluation of the term screening will require something like that fabric. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, what are you looking for?
I think you're right. Eyesore is subjective. But to most people walking by, not the people who are trying to save money, a chain link fence with plastic woven through it is never an attractive look.
I think all chain link is ugly. So
Yeah, I'm with you. So what I'm trying to, is there a place, and I'm asking the board, is there a place where we want to be a little bit more clear in the type of fencing?
We could just specify solid wood fencing.
Solid wood or vinyl fencing?
Mhm.
Or do we say chain link fencing is not appropriate to be used for screening? And just eliminate, if the chain link is the problem, I would much rather get rid of that than specify a different type. Because if it's not wood or vinyl, maybe there's a third type that I'm not aware of that is attractive, right?
But the flip side of that also is maybe I'm not thinking, maybe there's chicken wire fencing with
I would consider that
a
chain
tarp
link.
thrown over it. I don't know. I don't have a solution. That was the question that popped into my mind reading it.
and there may be like composite materials that are not vinyl or wood.
Right. That's what I was thinking too. And I don't know.
But I'm my biggest problem is chain link, and as long as chicken wire falls into that category, excluding chain link I think works.
Ron Arnold, do you guys have thoughts? Is this a non-issue for you?
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling about it.
Okay.
Same.
And you know, when we slide this along to planning board, I could have an off the record chat about a couple of the things where we were working with wording, just to highlight that kind of thing. And that might help them kind of think through stuff too. Okay, that's it for my comments or my notes under site design. Does anyone else have anything in this section? And then we can go back to the discussion about setbacks, whether that counts for open space or not.
If I may.
Yes, please.
On just above here on screening for parking, that last sentence, we had been discussing this during the last meeting. The buffer may include a fence or wall of no more than 6 feet in height, unless there is a significant grade change between the parking and the sidewalk. And I just, I find it confusing. And I think it would be, the buffer may include a fence or wall. It would be more appropriate instead of all that extra information. I don't know why, and I think we never came up with a reason why it was limited to no more than 6 feet in height. And then I'm just not quite sure why it had all that extra information. Somebody thought it was a good idea, but
Well, I know for me, I don't know that I had a strong argument, but I was picturing walking along a sidewalk with a 10-foot looming wall above me. And it didn't feel comfortable to me as a pedestrian. That's what I thought. John, you might have had an example to consider as well.
I think that was, yeah, probably what we talked about is when you're up against a sidewalk and if you have an 8-foot fence, it feels really tall. 6 foot's a little bit less imposing.
I don't, Mary, have a super strong feeling, but if I am a pedestrian on the sidewalk outside of the development,
okay,
I don't want to feel overwhelmed by a structure right on my right shoulder.
fair enough. Okay, I withdraw.
Anyone else with thoughts on that one? Okay. Do we even, well, I think we should probably. We might have eliminated the wording that led to my question about whether setbacks count as open space. What are the committee's thoughts? Should a setback be allowed as open space? Is the open space inside of the setback? My initial reaction was setbacks should not count, but go ahead, Mary.
Surprise, surprise, I have an opinion.
Just share.
I would
don't
say-
need hands. I keep saying I can't see the screen
I
very
feel
well
like-
anyway. So
I jump in too fast. I think that setbacks that are green, basically that are landscaped or naturally vegetated, should be included in the open space.
and that might have been kind of where I was thinking when I started thinking setbacks, not along the road, because I'm also thinking the sidewalk along the road. Arnold, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. I mean, if it's open space, it's open space, right? I mean, and I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to this. Maybe John does, but if it's in the right of way, does the setback have to be from where the boundary of the right of way is, or from the boundary of the road?
So the way we have it written, the front yard setback would be from the property line, not from the paved area or the sidewalk. It would be from the property line. So I think in one of our zoning districts, it says setback from the street or setback from the street line, but that's not what we're saying here.
So does that mean it has to be even further back from the street?
Yes, so it would be 20 feet from the property line.
Well, it says front yard setback 40 feet,
Right?
number 7.
Right, so it would be setback from the property line.
40 feet,
Yes.
and then potentially more than 40 feet from the street.
Yes.
Right. Well, it just seems, I mean, maybe if the idea is you don't want them to build any of this stuff, the more you cram it in and they have less and less space to build anything, that's my only thought.
So I will mention the 40 feet is flagged in the model. I pointed that out last time. 30 feet is not flagged. 40 feet is flagged as may require additional discussion. So we could change this to 30 feet and potentially have no issue with the model. Or keep it at 40 and see what they're going to say about that.
What is the front yard setback in that district right now?
In what district?
The
is it-
Cedar Street, Curtis's house.
Residential A,
Is it residential?
That's agricultural.
agricultural. Oh, agricultural is really high.
Yeah, I think it's like 60 feet.
So this is actually more generous than what is underlying our.
Yeah.
Correct.
to developers, more generous to developers.
Yeah. So in our bylaw, it says minimum setback from the street line 60 feet.
Okay.
So that's not a front yard setback. That's a setback from the street line. So we could change it and say setback from the street line instead of front yard setback. But I don't know how that's going to work with their model.
My own thought is I'd prefer not to change it because with the model we have, we've already run these numbers and we're feeling fairly confident. And I don't think it's that dramatic a difference.
So just to put another wrinkle in the residence A, which is where we pulled these dimensional numbers from, the setback is from the street line and it's 40 feet. So to Arnold's point, if the street is farther out, a 30-foot front yard setback from the property line may, on the ground, look like a 40-foot setback from the street line.
Mm.
Changing it from 40 to 30 in the model doesn't really change much. It doesn't help or hurt. It's just that 40 is flagged as something that may need further discussion.
And that setback is, if we made it 30 from the property line, that might be 40 feet from the street, and then there can be a building wall right there. Am I understanding that?
There could be a building 40 feet from the street, 30 feet from the property line.
Right. So one of the things that helps me, I don't know if you guys can immediately picture 40 feet. 40 feet is less than the distance from home plate to halfway to first. 40 feet is barely more than a first down on a football field. And it feels like if somebody wanted to put a building that close to the street, that can feel suffocating. So I'm not saying make it bigger. I hesitate to make it any smaller than what we have. And we have had plenty of buildings following these rough guidelines already in town. It hasn't seemed to turn developers away.
While we have this particular page up, we can also talk about, right now we have maximum building coverage of 45% and minimum open space of 30%. So that takes up 75% of the lot, assuming that they build the maximum size building. Let's just assume that. And that would leave 25% for parking.
And setbacks.
Well, that's if the setbacks are part of the open space, if they're vegetated, yeah. That would all be covered, but
yeah.
But yeah, it would be parking and, you know, sidewalks that aren't included in open space, which is the front one only. So that's what we're talking about right now.
To your last question though, Ted, I don't think we should go less than 40 feet either.
Okay.
Not for that district.
Right. And I have been persuaded that vegetated setbacks can count as open space. I've switched sides. I like vegetated being included there.
Okay. And I don't know where that is in the bylaw, but
It was a question in one of the parts of the bylaw.
I think it was in the definition.
It might have been in the definition initially. I don't know if it's information we still need to include because we changed the definition.
Yeah, I think we might need to.
But, you know, I'll tell you this. Here's a little admission. I like changing my mind. It proves to me I'm open to listening to people. Sometimes I worry that I'm not. And then I get my mind changed and I feel good about myself.
Okay.
So I don't know where to type that in, but it looks like
He just put it in there.
Okay.
In the vegetated and or landscaped
There we go.
setbacks.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on this part?
So just to
Yeah,
make you aware, if we have this technical assistant consultant, tell us that 40 feet is not going to fly with the state, do we want to reduce it to 30 feet?
I say yes. If she tells us it won't work, then yeah.
Okay.
I feel like we don't have a choice. We got to get the state to approve whatever we put together. I know we technically do have a choice. I don't feel like it's a real choice.
Okay. Are we all set with this open space definition?
I think we are. Mary's double thumbs upping. It is 8:20. So I think what I want to do is direct us to the other main section that John Yellow highlighted. And I think it's going to be pretty quick. This is planning board authority to waive provisions. I guess I had two comments here. One is simply writing. I would recommend getting rid of the double negative. Would not be inconsistent. I would change to would be consistent. If it's in the public interest and would be consistent with the purpose. And then the other thing I had is, does this waiver of provisions really only apply to 255A, which is dimensional standards? Does it not apply to the other parts? Is that on purpose or?
So I think this is a formatting issue on my end. So this is a colon. So these should actually be one parentheses, and then these should be that.
Okay.
So it would apply to all the dimensional standards.
Okay. And it is, the A is in green, which you said you're going to have to adjust later anyway, but I just.
So it wouldn't impact multi-building lots, exceptions, or exceptions for renewable energy installations. It would just basically say the board can waive these requirements.
A, B, and C.
Yeah, really B and C, because A doesn't include anything, but yes,
Okay.
They would be included under A.
Okay. Does anyone else have any thoughts on giving the planning board the authority to waive the provisions?
This may seem like a silly question, but is it just waiving it, or do we need to specify that they can actually modify or like adjust it based on the design or the plan?
So in this situation, waiving is modifying.
Okay, same thing.
Yeah, it would basically be a developer saying, we only want to do 15 feet rear yard setback. So the board would waive that requirement of 20 feet and establish
except the 15 feet. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think, Sam, they ever say, will you just unload this and let us do whatever we want?
Right.
That's not quite the way it works.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the intent is basically saying, we want to do this development in this certain way. We think it looks better. Planning board says, okay, it does look better. We'll give you a little break on these dimensional things to allow that type of development to happen. Mm-hmm. Rather than, we want to put 5 more units in and we need 5 extra feet of setback space. Then the board will say, no, you need to go by what's actually allowed. That's the intent.
Anything else on G? Can we unhighlight it, Zach? I think there's one thumbs up from Sam. Good. We got a thumbs up. All right. So you guys feeling, Sam, are you feeling okay? Can you hang in there a little while longer?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So I've got a bunch of other notes that I think will be short and small. And if anyone else has other notes, just cut me off and say it's your turn. While we're on this page, John, to make it easier to move around, I wanted to talk about E, exceptions. This is a limitation on height. And as I read it, it started to make me nervous. And I'll tell you why. The limitation on height of buildings shall not apply to chimneys. Okay. Ventilators. Okay. Towers, silos, spires, or other ornamental features of buildings. So then I got nervous because I started thinking, number one, cell phone tower, but that's an accessory use, so maybe not because that's a commercial thing. But what if They said, hey, we are open to ham radio operators and we're installing ham radio antennas on the roof. Would that be allowed? Those are pretty darn tall. What if they are a developer that says our signature is a 2-story Liberty Bell on top of our building? Would that then be allowed under the way we've listed exceptions? Or am I getting nervous about things that the exceptions don't really allow? I don't know if that's for John or other folks, but those were my questions as I read it.
Is it common to have this type of exception in bylaws? It seems like a very specific set of things to call out.
That might be aimed at you, John. Was this in the model, or is this something we normally see for height exceptions?
This is from the model. I'm looking in our zoning bylaw to see what we say about height.
Okay.
My knee jerk is to not have exceptions on height, and then if they need to, they can ask for a waiver from planning board.
That's my thought too. Like I said, when I read chimneys and ventilators, I thought, all right, well, that's not going to add a whole lot of height to a building. I think we're waiting for John to skim what we have.
It's not defined. It is defined somewhere else.
And by the way, while John's looking for that, in F, for renewable energy installation, it says the installation shall not create noise or shadow. So that again made me think of simply adding height as an exception, because it would create more shadow if their trademark was a 2-story Liberty Bell on top of their apartment buildings.
It actually wouldn't, if it wasn't affecting the abutters, so if it's not shading an abutter, it
all depends on
that wouldn't alone prevent it from happening. So yeah, you can't count on that.
So we have chimneys, spikes, towers, and other projections not used for human occupancy may be constructed above the foregoing height limitations upon the grant of a special permit by the Board of Appeals, provided, however, that no wireless communications facility shall be erected except in compliance with Article 16, wireless communications facilities.
Can we use that language here?
We can try.
I think that language is fine, but I would suggest that it doesn't need the waiver from Board of Appeals to just have the chimney or the other things mentioned.
What would you propose then, Mary?
Well, the wording that he had, but just strike out the whole.
The wording he just read.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But just no Board of Appeals. Chimneys, oh.
So if you strike out with permission of Board of Appeals, then it's just feel free to build. And there's that tower. That was one of the words that caught me.
No, the towers were not in the part that John, you have highlighted.
I think he cut and pasted.
Oh, I thought, yeah. Oh, and other projections, towers and chimneys, spikes, towers, and other projections. Okay. Silos and spires and oh my.
Arnold, your hand is up. Arnold, feel free to just jump in.
All right. So I'm just devil's advocate, I guess. I'm like for the new school they're building, the Board of Appeals, our only role on that was to give a waiver on the height restriction, and because the new school is going to be higher than under the zoning.
Mhm.
And there's going to be things on top of that, like a kind of a shed on the roof kind of thing, for utilities. I mean, it seems to me that the model language is typical, and if you can't have ventilators, say, or you have to get a special permit or something for it, then it's going to limit it. I don't even know. It seems like the kind of thing that the state might not even approve of. So, it seems to me that the whole premise of this, what the state is doing, is it's to encourage more housing, and in a way, it conflicts with conservation and that kind of thing. By having more, not having 10 living space, 10 homes per acre. So there's a bit of a conflict there, but so I'm just, like I'm saying before, I'm just alerting or giving the view that you have this sort of a conflict, and I'm not, by having this kind of a change from the model, the state's model, you're kind of going against the purpose of what the state wants us to do. I'm just putting that out there, and personally, it doesn't bother me really if we are actually going to make this so it's harder to build, but I'm just trying to look at it objectively.
I don't feel like we're trying to limit their building. We just want them to build in a way that conforms with what we would like to see in downtown or in those places. But I'm just not familiar whether it's common to list exceptions for height, and would rather not reinvent the wheel if something already exists.
Well, this is in the state model. I mean, it's those are the kind of things that for example, theoretically, you could have an antenna or something on it or something. Then that would that mean that the height is you're violating the height, or are you some kind of HVAC kind of thing that they need to put on the roof? Just if it's, I don't know. John's the town planner. I don't know what he thinks, but I'm. And as a lawyer, I sometimes represent people who are developers, maybe, and I was on the planning board, like I say, in the town I lived in before for a long time. So I just my sense is that you have regulations like this, it makes it harder for somebody to build. And I'm a little conflicted because in a way I wouldn't mind if there wasn't all this 700 new homes built because of this bylaw. So
John, do you have thoughts on that? Is there worry that if we change in this section and make it a little bit harder to add towers, spires, that the Commonwealth would be upset with us?
I don't know. I don't see a situation where a developer is going to be doing these massive ornamental type of designs. It's extra money that they don't want to spend for something that they're not going to get square footage out of. I think it's more of, if they're going to have an architectural style, they want to have the ability to do these types of architectural ornamental things. I think the no way use for living purposes. I mean, we could change it instead of living purposes for human occupancy. And then it's really just space that's never going to be used. So why would they build all of this space that's never going to be used? It just, it seems,
Well,
I understand your concern. I think it's unrealistic that a developer is going to want to do that.
isn't it? I mean, some of these things I agree, like, spires maybe, but what about ventilators? And I don't know what towers or silos actually cover, but what about
Spikes.
don't they put sometimes on the roofs some type of HVAC or something for the especially if it's a multifamily like almost like an apartment building or something that they put things on the roof for the isn't that true?
Yeah, they can. And commercial buildings do that too. And I think in the commercial districts, those mechanical equipment is required to be screened from the public view.
Well, anyway, I mean, it's not something I really care about. I'm just kind of pointing it out, and just maybe the general thrust is, you get. I do think that the state's mandate here, or their desire to have, houses on 4,000 square foot lots, possibly, is. Well, in a way, it is environmental if you have a huge area, and you put them all close together, and then you have a lot of open space. But anyway, I was just putting that out there as something to consider, and whether it and to what extent it might cause a problem for some builder who wants to build something pursuant to this. Could be, and so I'm just, I'm not. As far as me voting, it's not really an issue one way or the other to me.
Mary, may I circle back to you? What was your hesitancy with taking what John read, including Board of Appeals, and substituting it in here?
Including Board of Appeals? I just didn't think that it was necessary. I thought that it should be, these exceptions were kind of no-brainers in my mind.
But then you hesitated when it came to some of the exceptions that were listed, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, because our bylaws currently say you have to go to the Board of Appeals. But I agree that it's not highly likely that any developer is going to try to put big decorative towers on their project. So, so I would just say the chimneys and ventilators and basically, the other things like that are not for human occupancy.
So what if we took, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit
No,
worried
that's
about
okay.
it. What if we took the model and we just said it shall not apply to chimneys, ventilators, or I don't know what a word is, all encompassing HVAC systems, like systems integral to the operation of the building. But if we eliminated
Mechanical,
towers,
yeah.
silos, spires,
Yeah, mechanical equipment, utility type stuff.
Yeah.
I would want to, I think you're probably right. I think John's right. I don't think anyone's going to put a 2-story Liberty Bell, but the way the model had it written, they could, I think.
Yeah.
So I would just as soon eliminate towers, silos, spires, but do allow exceptions for what we just listed.
So the concern I have with that is towers. I'm not an architect. I'm not a developer. Towers, silos, spires may have some mechanical purpose.
I mean, we're not living in a world with the water towers on top of buildings anymore. right? Like those old New York buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
But you're
like
right, I'm
a
not an architect either. I don't know.
spire might be a lightning rod.
Hmm.
A
Do we-
tower might be ventilation or something that's not a ventilator or mechanical equipment.
Hmm.
A silo might be some, maybe there's some environmental way to cool a building that's passive and it requires a silo or a tower. I don't know.
I don't know either. But if there is a ventilator that requires a tower, it seems like that's covered in ventilators.
But maybe it's not a ventilator. Maybe it's another type of mechanical equipment that's not actually
Yeah.
mechanical equipment. It serves an HVAC purpose, but it's not mechanical equipment. Personally, I think tower, silos, and spires are generally included in the exceptions for height.
So maybe eliminate other ornamental features. That gets rid of the 2-story Liberty Bell.
Sure.
And again, look, I don't think there's going to be one, but I also don't see any reason to leave that possibility out there. Is my thought. That little change right there makes me happier. And if anyone has an argument for keeping ornamental features, feel free to make it now.
That looks good to me.
Okay.
Do you want me to add human occupancy or just leave it as living purposes?
I think that's one and the
I
same
think
to me.
your wording is nicer.
It's either way is fine. Living purposes sounds like human occupancy. It's the same to me.
To do that? That would be consistent with our bylaws.
Good. Then I like that. Okay. John, I was hoping if you could just explain to us, or maybe I'm the only one that needs it, the thinking for a number of parking spaces, the following maximum off-street shall be permitted. Just help me think through what that means.
So the state model bylaw is looking for maximum parking, not minimum parking, because they are intended to be developments adjacent to transit and therefore reducing the parking requirements.
What does that mean for the downtown district? Does a builder have to find parking?
Potentially.
Okay. No, they don't. It's the maximum. They don't have
Right.
to.
Yeah. Potentially they would have to find parking.
Okay. All right. That's all I need then for there. I'm almost done, I think. Let me see here. I'm almost done. I don't know if anyone else has stuff. Let me just look back up. Okay. I have got one other thing, and then I think I'm done. Where does this fit? Oh, we eliminated that wording anyway, so that one's gone. The last thing I have is the hyphens I told you about earlier, John. If you go to permitted uses 210, 254. Oh, actually, I have a little scribble next to this other thing too. So let me see if I can remember what that scribble meant. Anyway, we have A, uses permitted as -of right, but then we're not consistent in the spot where you just fixed it. Or C, accessory uses. And then I just figured out what my scribble was. Mixed use development as of right uses. One of those is simply retail. And so I started thinking of all the different retail that may or may not decide to move in. And do we want it to be as of right that open? It's the second line, right after personal services. Do you see what I'm talking? Right there. It struck me that that opens up to all sorts of potential things if retail, unless I'm misreading it, if it simply says retail by right. because that could be marijuana, that could be pornography, that could be, I don't know. Those were the
So
two
these are
places
uses by
that-
these are uses by special permit.
Oh, I thought it was by right. Oh, well, if it's special permit, fine. Thank you. I did misread it.
Oh, this should be
Oh, so maybe I didn't misread it.
that's written wrong. That's right. Let's see. Just do uses.
That's the problem when you're using somebody else's template.
Hmm.
Things pop up that you don't you don't think were supposed to be worded that way.
Hmm. I'm feeling relieved that at least I did read it correctly, that it did say as of right above retail.
Does that make sense?
That may be allowed, and right above it, it says by special permit. Yeah, that feels good to me. I wonder, we do have in the underlying zoning restrictions on what type of retail in different zones. This would allow a developer under MBTA to propose stuff that's not allowed underlying, right? They still need a permit, but we have some places you can't even propose it. You can't even ask for a special permit. Do we like it that open? Are we okay with that? Do we want wording that says retail that fits the underlying zoning?
So for your two examples of pornography and marijuana,
I just picked sins.
I believe those are covered under adult uses and the marijuana section of the bylaw.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those wouldn't apply.
Okay, but I imagine we can think of retail that we might not want in the downtown area. And yes, it says special permit, but we also have delineated in the downtown area, in residential A, these are what you may ask for by special permit. This would overrule that. And you may ask for anything. And you may get denied. I understand that.
So
Can we-
I just also want to point out if a developer builds a retail space in the downtown and so a business comes in with a use that is seen as undesirable, if there's no market for it, it's not going to survive. If there's a market for it, then it probably is actually desirable. In reality, people might just say it's not. So I
don't think that's true, John, from a planning point of view. And we've talked about this on South Street. There might be a market for certain things on South Street, but from a planning point of view, they might not be the most desirable things on South Street. I imagine that we could put a KFC and a Chipotle and a McDonald's, and they would do fabulously well on South Street. I don't know if that's a desirable planning option for the town.
Right, but if you're saying retail, how do you really refine what retail? Because retail is retail. Those are restaurants in an industrial district.
Okay.
Right? I guess it's just.
But I guess what I'm saying is we have defined these are the types of retail you may ask for a special permit, haven't we? Or have we not?
I don't know that it goes into that.
I don't
level.
think it does. I think I'm just trying to find one of the districts. So like in the downtown business district, one of the uses is retail store and retail service shop.
Okay.
That's an allowed use.
I'm not trying to prove anyone wrong. Just jump to one of the residentials and see if it says anything.
It's probably not going to say retail because it's a residential district.
But we do have businesses in residential. I don't know if we have retail
Yeah,
businesses.
but not
We have
retail.
businesses.
Home specialty retail. No, retail is not a use in residential districts.
I have a question, just so I can understand this a little bit further. When we say by special permit, can desirable be a criteria that the planning board uses to determine whether that special permit is allowed or not? Because my understanding is as long as it meets the rules, anyway, that's my question.
No, desirable is such a subjective term. One
Right.
board may think something's desirable and the next board may think it's not.
So I think in that case, if we feel, I'm not saying one way or another, but if we feel like we want to specify what type of retail we need there, it sounds like we would want to do that here.
So just to kind of maybe clarify a little bit, in the downtown business district, there is a permitted use for mixed-use building comprised of retail space on the first floor and office space or residential dwelling units on the second and third floors. The residential dwelling units shall have dedicated on-site parking spaces. No dwelling unit shall have less than 600 gross square feet. That is what the intent of this mixed-use special permit was, is to have that same thing that's allowed in the downtown business district. So that is very broad retail use in our current bylaw.
I'm comfortable with that.
What's that, Mary? I'm sorry, I spoke over you.
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm growing much more comfortable with it. What's our definition of retail? Is it an exchange of a good or service for money? Is it exchange of a good for money?
That is very kind of you that you think we've defined all of these things, and then we did not. We don't define retail in our bylaw. So it probably defaults to if the building code has retail, what the building code defines it as.
All right. I think the biggest thing was when I first read it, and I was right, it did say as of right, but that's gone. I don't think I want to linger on this much longer. I think I'm feeling okay. It is 8 minutes to 9. We've gone through every pen mark in my copy. Does anybody else have anything else that we might be able to fit in the next 8 minutes?
No,
I do.
John does? Or Sam does?
I have a question back on the map that I missed my opportunity to ask. So if we need, we don't need to go to it. If we run out of time, though, we can focus on this.
So mine's not a change. It's just pointing something out. So speaking with the technical assistance consultant, the way that our inclusionary bylaw is written, where the fractional units are rounded up, would not be allowed. So she just in our scoping meeting, and she'll check this, recommended just putting in some language saying in the MCMOD, the fractional units are rounded down. Everything else is the same. Trigger is the same. Percentage is the same, but fractional units are rounded down. So whereas in any other development in town, a 12-unit development would result in 2 affordable units. In the MCMOD, it would be 1 affordable unit.
Okay.
Like the other change, I'd say if we have to do it, we have to do it. I'm curious about the reasoning. Why don't they like rounding up?
So they put a hard limit at you can do 10% affordable housing. And if you go over 10%, you have to have a fiscal viability assessment or something like that. So basically, I'm assuming if you're rounding up, that's going over the 10%, and therefore you need to have that assessment done to justify it.
Okay, well, if that's a change we have to make, we have to make it. Kind of like what you said about if 40 feet needs to be reduced to 30. Just kind of shrug and say, okay. Anybody else, or can we go to Sam's map question? I think you're on, Sam.
Cool. Hopefully this one's a quick one, and I probably just missed the conversation at some point about it. But John earlier mentioned that you wouldn't recommend including the police station. Looking at the map, looks like we included the fire station. Do we have any thoughts on that? Or reasoning?
So I will say in the downtown district, town hall property and the fire station are not included in the acreage calculation. So they would only be included if they were to get changed to not be publicly owned land. So we could eliminate the fire station.
And it wouldn't change our calculation.
It shouldn't. But including it also doesn't change our calculation. So
Do you have a reason to eliminate it, Sam, or were you just curious?
No. John mentioned earlier he would not recommend including the police station. So I was wondering if, for the same reasons, we would not want to include the fire station. That's all.
John, do you have a thought? Why the fire, not police?
the only reason is the fire station is basically tiny parcel and doesn't really impact anything. The police station is a much larger parcel, which if you're looking at the district, that may be a more significant proportion of the district and may throw off our model.
Okay. Are you comfortable with that, Sam?
Yeah, that's fine.
It sounds like a reasonable explanation to me too.
Yeah.
Oof. Does anybody have anything else? Does anyone have a motion they'd like to propose? John, before I was suggesting a motion to adjourn. John, do we need to vote on what we have here? Should we hold that to one more meeting to get one final read?
I would actually hold it until we get some feedback from the technical consultant.
Okay, so we don't need to vote then on what we've been working on.
No.
And feels like we may have come close to wrapping up tonight. So is there a different motion anyone would like to propose?
Yeah, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote on adjourning. Sam
Yes.
and Arnold,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
and Ted Barker Hook is also a yes. Happy Thanksgiving. And John, thank you as ever. Happy Thanksgiving to you, John.
Thank you. You all too.
We don't have a scheduled next meeting. John and I will chat and see what makes sense and what might ought to be on that agenda. Everybody comfortable with that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
John, you're comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Great. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Bye.
I'm here.